A Soldier's Heart. Sergeant Liam O'Connor sat by the fading campfire, its last flickering flames casting shadows over his rugged face. He was a man of hardened steel forged through the heat of battle. Having served 3 tours in Afghanistan, Liam had seen more than most men could bear. The nightmares of conflict clung to his every thought, even during the brief moments of calm. Yet within him, there was still a deep vulnerability, a longing for home, for warmth, for a life not defined by violence. The simple joys of family life, a quiet home, laughter over the dinner table, these were his dreams. They seemed distant, wrapped up in the mist of longing and pain that had come with his years of service. Liam's wife, Evelyn, was his anchor in the turbulent seas of war. Her strength was soft but unbreakable, a comfort that held him steady amidst the storm of combat. Every letter she sent was a lifeline, each word painting a picture of the life they'd soon share. Her handwriting smelled faintly of lavender, reminding him of their modest home back in Manchester. Evelyn was a writer and teacher, a woman whose love for stories and children filled her days. She dreamed of building a family with Liam for as long as they'd been married. They wanted a cottage full of memories, laughter, and tiny footsteps echoing down the hall. When Evelyn wrote to tell Liam she was expecting their first child, it was a bittersweet message. Joy surged through him at the thought of becoming a father. Yet a wave of apprehension followed. The timing was all wrong. His deployment orders had already come through, and he knew he'd missed the better part of the pregnancy. But he clung to hope. The doctors calculated that the due date would align almost perfectly with his leave. He might make it back just in time to hold his child in his arms. The months of deployment passed with a grueling slowness, each day punctuated by the constant hum of helicopters overhead and the unforgiving sun beating down. Every morning, he would mark another day off his small calendar, hoping he'd be home before his child took their first breath. Evelyn's letters continued to arrive, a steady stream of comfort amidst the chaos. She described her growing belly, the little kicks that woke her up in the night, and the preparations she was making for the nursery. She painted it in shades of green and yellow, warm and inviting, a haven waiting for their little one's arrival. But fate had different plans. In the 7th month of Evelyn's pregnancy, Liam's unit was ambushed. The attack was unexpected and brutal, a grim reminder of the constant dangers lurking in every corner. The explosion echoed through the valley, followed by gunfire and the metallic scent of burning. Liam moved on instinct, his training kicking in as he rallied his men, returning fire with a calm intensity that belied the chaos around them. When the dust finally settled, Liam was left unscathed but shaken to his core. Men he had laughed with, men who had become brothers to him, were gone. The attack left Liam with an even stronger sense of urgency to return home, to be with his family. Word of the ambush reached his superiors, and in a rare gesture of compassion, they granted him leave. He'd get to be there for the birth of his child after all. For Liam, it felt like a lifeline thrown at the last possible moment. He boarded the transport plane with his heart pounding, the anticipation of meeting his child overwhelming his every thought. As he touched down in Manchester, he felt like a different man. The fog of war, the gunfire, the dust, they all seemed like distant memories, dissipating as he breathed in the cool, familiar air. He felt lighter, almost as if the weight of the war had lifted, if only for a moment. Evelyn was in labor when he arrived at the hospital, her face flushed but radiant as she lay in the delivery room. The sight of her after so long brought tears to his eyes, and he held her hand tightly, feeling her strength radiate through the exhaustion and pain. Hours passed as he waited in the sterile corridor, the sounds of doctors and nurses bustling about around him. He had faced bullets, explosions, and ambushes, yet nothing prepared him for this helpless waiting. The anticipation was a physical ache, each second stretching into an eternity. He prayed for the safe arrival of their baby, for Evelyn's strength to hold. Finally, a nurse appeared with a bright smile. "Congratulations, Sergeant O'Connor," she said warmly. "You have a beautiful baby girl." Liam's heart leaped. A girl. He'd thought about what he'd say, how he'd hold his child for the first time. But now his mind was blank. He followed the nurse into the room, where Evelyn lay cradling their newborn in her arms. He approached slowly, his eyes taking in every detail, his heart swelling with love and pride. Evelyn looked up at him, her face radiant, her eyes brimming with tears. But as Liam drew closer, something inside him shifted. The baby in Evelyn's arms, though undeniably beautiful, had a complexion much darker than either of them. Her tiny face, though delicate and perfect, bore features that didn't resemble his or Evelyn's. A cold, sinking feeling settled into his stomach, clouding the joy that had blossomed moments before. He felt his chest tighten, a familiar pang of confusion and doubt gnawing at him. "Evelyn," he whispered, his voice trembling. How is this possible?" Evelyn's eyes met his, and for a moment there was only silence between them. She looked down at the baby, her smile faltering, her expression a mixture of fear and pain. He could see her struggling, searching for words that might bring clarity to the impossible moment they found themselves in. "Liam," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "I can explain." But Liam was already backing away, his mind racing, his heart breaking as the enormity of the situation pressed down on him. He felt betrayed, hurt in a way that no battlefield could inflict. His dreams of family, of coming home to a life he'd longed for, were crumbling right before his eyes. I need a moment," he said, his voice hollow. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the hospital room, each step echoing with the weight of his shattered dreams. As he stood outside the hospital, his mind was a whirlpool of emotions: anger, confusion, betrayal. He felt the crushing disappointment of a man who had risked everything for a life that now seemed like a lie. The woman he loved, the family he'd dreamed of, the future he'd held on to during those dark nights on the battlefield, it all felt like it was slipping away. Yet, as he stood there in the cold, silent night, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd rushed to judgment. Could there be an explanation, something he hadn't considered? Was he letting his pain cloud his judgment? But the gnawing doubts remained. Shadows of doubt. Liam's footsteps echoed in the stillness as he walked through the empty hospital corridors, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The fluorescent lights above cast a sterile glow, illuminating every corner of his consciousness where doubt and anger had taken root. The initial joy he'd felt, the happiness of coming home, of seeing his wife and newborn child, had been swallowed by a sinking dread. He leaned against a cold, tiled wall, feeling like the foundation of his life was shifting beneath him. As a soldier, he was trained to act, to adapt, to confront danger without hesitation. But here, in the silence of the hospital, Liam felt helpless. The vision of the baby in Evelyn's arms replayed in his mind, sparking confusion and betrayal with every thought. He had pictured this moment countless times during his deployment. A little one with Evelyn's warmth and his own steel-eyed gaze, a child who would embody the best of them both. But the reality he had stepped into was different. Liam's first instinct was to demand answers, to go back to the room and ask Evelyn what had happened. But each time he took a step in her direction, his heart clenched, the possibility of betrayal making it impossible to move. He thought back to all the letters Evelyn had written during his deployment. She had been so hopeful, so steadfast in her love and excitement for their future. He tried to remember if there were any hints, anything that might have hinted at a rift or a secret. He couldn't think of any. Evelyn had always been the epitome of honesty and loyalty, the person he had trusted more than anyone in the world. But now, that trust felt shaken, cracked down the middle. He needed air. Liam exited through the hospital doors, finding himself under the midnight sky. He breathed in the cool air, hoping it would clear his mind. The quiet was almost oppressive, amplifying the sound of his own heartbeat thundering in his chest. The stars above twinkled faintly, indifferent to the turmoil consuming him. He looked down the empty street, feeling as though he was staring into a chasm between the life he had and the life he thought he had. As the hours passed, Liam sat on a bench near the hospital entrance, wrestling with memories and fears. Memories of Evelyn's laughter, her kindness, the way she would hold his hand so tightly when they walked through the park back home. Fears that everything they'd built was an illusion, a fragile dream that had shattered upon his return. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Liam knew he couldn't hide from Evelyn forever. He had to face her, to find out the truth, no matter how painful. He took a deep breath and walked back into the hospital, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over him as he made his way to her room. If there was an explanation, he needed to hear it from her. When he entered the room, Evelyn was awake, cradling their baby with a tenderness that tugged at his heart despite his suspicions. She looked up at him, her face pale and worn, shadows beneath her eyes betraying a night of little sleep and much worry. "Liam," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, please, come here." He approached slowly, his face a mask of stoicism that hid the battle waging inside him. Evelyn met his gaze, her own eyes searching his face for any sign of the man she knew, the man who had once looked at her with nothing but love. "How?" His voice was hoarse, filled with a hurt that cut deeper than any wound. "Evelyn, how is this possible?" Evelyn took a deep breath, glancing down at their daughter before speaking. "Liam, I don't know how to explain this in a way that will make sense. I know what you're thinking, and I can only beg you to believe me when I say that I would never betray you. I love you. You are the only man I've ever wanted a family with." Her voice cracked, and Liam could see the anguish in her eyes, a pain that mirrored his own. But his heart was guarded, unwilling to soften. "The baby," he said, his words barely audible. "She doesn't look like us, Evelyn. I don't understand." Evelyn's lips trembled as she struggled to hold back tears. "I know it doesn't make sense," she whispered. "I can't explain it myself. I've racked my brain trying to understand. And there's nothing that could make sense of this. All I know is that she's ours, Liam. She's our daughter. I felt her grow inside me. I felt every kick, every flutter." Liam looked down at the baby, at her innocent face and tiny hands that rested against Evelyn's chest. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but the doubt gnawed at him. How could he ignore what seemed so clear? As they sat in silence, a nurse entered to check on Evelyn. She looked between the two of them, sensing the tension that filled the room. She offered a sympathetic smile, likely assuming it was just the exhaustion of new parenthood, and went about her tasks quietly. When she left, Liam spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Evelyn, if you're telling the truth, if you really don't know, then maybe we need answers from somewhere else." Evelyn looked up at him, confusion flashing across her face. "What do you mean?" "A paternity test," he said, his voice hollow. "If you're telling me this is our child, then a test will prove it. It's the only way I can make sense of this." A look of hurt flickered across Evelyn's face, but she nodded, her voice quiet but resolute. "If that's what it takes, then, yes. I'll do it. I'll do anything to prove to you that she's yours, Liam." Liam nodded, feeling a mix of relief and dread at the thought of having an answer, one way or another. They sat together in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. He reached for her hand, almost instinctively, but hesitated. The warmth he once found in her touch felt distant now, clouded by suspicion. He pulled back, leaving his hand to rest awkwardly on the edge of the bed. The days that followed were tense and filled with silence. Evelyn went home from the hospital, Liam at her side, but they were worlds apart. Their cozy cottage, once a haven of love and laughter, felt like a prison of unspoken words and quiet accusations. Every time Liam looked at their daughter, the beautiful little girl with soft brown skin and delicate features, his heart ached with confusion and fear. He wanted to love her, to embrace her as his own, but the doubt stood like an immovable wall between him and the family he had dreamed of. Evelyn was a ghost of herself, moving through the days in a haze of exhaustion and heartbreak. She tended to their daughter with the tender care of a devoted mother, singing lullabies, rocking her to sleep, and gazing at her with a look of pure love. Liam watched her, a part of him wanting to believe that she was telling the truth, that there was some explanation they hadn't uncovered yet. But another part of him felt betrayed, abandoned by the one person he had always trusted. One evening, a few days after they had settled back into the house, Evelyn approached him in the kitchen as he was preparing a simple meal. She looked exhausted, her face pale, and her shoulders slumped under the weight of unspoken pain. "Liam," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, "I know this is tearing us apart. I know you're hurt, and I wish more than anything that I could make you believe me. But there's something else you should know." He turned to face her, his heart pounding as he took in the seriousness of her tone. "What is it?" She hesitated, her eyes filling with tears as she struggled to find the words. "When you were deployed, something happened to me. Something I've tried so hard to forget, to bury deep within myself. I didn't want to tell you, didn't want to burden you with this while you were facing enough as it was." Liam's chest tightened as he saw the pain in her eyes. "Evelyn, what are you saying?" She took a deep breath, her voice barely audible as she spoke. "I was assaulted, Liam, by a stranger one night. I was walking home from a gathering with friends, and I tried to forget it, to pretend it never happened, but—" Her voice broke, and she looked down, tears streaming down her face. Liam felt the world tilt, his mind reeling from the shock of her words. His heart ached with a raw, aching pain as he realized the depth of the trauma she had endured, the pain she had carried in silence. He reached out, pulling her into his arms as she sobbed against his chest, her body trembling with the weight of her sorrow. In that moment, Liam felt his own anger and hurt dissolve, replaced by a deep and overwhelming guilt. He had doubted her, accused her, when she had been carrying a burden he couldn't even begin to comprehend. The truth settled between them, raw and painful, casting a new light on everything they had endured. The question of paternity suddenly felt insignificant in the face of the trauma Evelyn had endured, the strength she had shown by carrying their child despite the pain she bore. As they stood together in the kitchen, the first rays of forgiveness began to dawn, faint but steady. They would have to find a way forward, to rebuild their shattered trust, and to heal the wounds that had torn their lives apart. But for the first time since the birth of their child, Liam felt hope, a fragile, delicate hope that they could face this together. Shattered trust and tentative steps. The days following Evelyn's revelation were marked by an uneasy silence between them. Liam's heart was filled with remorse, but every attempt to bridge the gap was met with Evelyn's quiet reserve. She had opened up, revealing her deepest pain, but her confession had fractured something within her, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable in a way that Liam had never seen before. She moved through the house with a distracted air, her mind clearly somewhere else, as if a part of her had retreated to a place where she could feel safe, distant from the man who had doubted her. Each night, Liam lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind plagued by guilt and regret. He wanted to tell her how sorry he was, how much he loved her, and how he wished he could go back and erase the doubt and anger he had harbored. But something held him back, a fear that words alone would not be enough to heal the wound he had inflicted. One evening, as they sat in silence at the dinner table, Evelyn finally broke the quiet. "Liam," she began softly, her voice almost too quiet to hear, "I know you're sorry, and I know you want to fix this, but it's not something that can be fixed overnight. What happened, what I went through, I carried it alone because I didn't want it to change us. I didn't want you to see me as someone broken." Her words struck him like a blow. He realized then that his doubts and accusations had only compounded her pain, reinforcing the fear that she was somehow damaged in his eyes. He reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "Evelyn, you are not broken. You're the strongest person I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was blinded by my own insecurities. I thought I was the one who had been hurt, but I couldn't see that you were suffering alone." She met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and something else, a flicker of the trust that had once been so strong between them. "I want to believe that, Liam," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I don't know if things can go back to the way they were. I thought I could bury it, that we could just move forward and be happy. But now—" She trailed off, looking away as tears filled her eyes. Liam felt a pang of despair, realizing that he might have lost the love they had shared. He wanted to reassure her, to promise her that he would spend every day making it up to her. But he knew that words were not enough. She needed to see his commitment, his willingness to fight for them, to earn back the trust he had so thoughtlessly broken. The next few days were a fragile balance of shared moments and cautious distance. Liam was determined to be there for Evelyn, to support her in every way he could. He took over more responsibilities around the house, allowing her to rest and recuperate. He spent hours with their daughter, little Emma, holding her, singing softly as she slept in his arms. Emma's tiny presence became a source of solace for Liam, a reminder of the love that had once bound him and Evelyn so tightly. She had Evelyn's softness, a gentleness that calmed him even in the worst of times. Yet, every time he held her, there was a flicker of doubt in the back of his mind, a reminder of the uncertainty that had nearly torn their family apart. He wanted to believe that Emma was his, to let go of the shadows of suspicion that had crept in, but a small part of him still craved the reassurance of a definitive answer. He hadn't brought up the paternity test again, unwilling to hurt Evelyn further, but he knew that the question would continue to haunt him until it was resolved. One evening, as they sat quietly in the living room, Evelyn spoke, breaking the fragile peace that had settled between them. "Liam, I've been thinking," she said, her voice hesitant, "about the paternity test." He looked at her, surprised. It was a topic he had avoided, fearing that any mention of it would reopen the wounds they were both trying so hard to heal. But Evelyn's expression was serious, her gaze steady. "I know that you need answers," she continued, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying a flicker of vulnerability. "And if a paternity test is what it takes to give you that, then I'm willing to do it. I don't want us to spend our lives haunted by doubt." Liam was torn. He didn't want to hurt her by reopening the question of paternity, but he couldn't deny the relief he felt at her willingness to face the truth, whatever it might be. He reached out, taking her hand gently. "Evelyn, are you sure?" he asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't want to put you through more pain." She nodded, her expression resolute. "Yes, Liam. I'd rather we face this head-on than let it eat away at us. If it helps us find some closure, then it's worth it." The following morning, they made arrangements for the test, each of them carrying a quiet determination. Evelyn was visibly nervous, her hands shaking as she filled out the paperwork, but she kept her focus on the task, her resolve unshakable. Liam felt a mix of emotions, relief, fear, and a deep respect for Evelyn's strength. She was facing her pain head-on, refusing to let it define her or their family. He knew then that, whatever the results, he would stand by her, determined to rebuild the life they had once dreamed of. The waiting period for the results was excruciating. Each day seemed to stretch into an eternity, filled with small interactions that were marked by an underlying tension. Liam tried to distract himself with work around the house, fixing things that had long been neglected. He would check in on Evelyn often, bringing her tea or sitting with her in comfortable silence, but he could feel the strain that had settled between them. One afternoon, as he was working on repairing the old fence in their backyard, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Evelyn standing there, her arms wrapped around herself, a hesitant look in her eyes. "Liam," she said quietly, "can we talk?" He set down his tools and nodded, brushing the dirt off his hands as he walked over to her. They sat down on a nearby bench, the autumn leaves falling gently around them, casting a golden hue over the yard. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she began, her gaze focused on the ground. "About everything we've been through, and where we go from here." Liam listened intently, his heart pounding as he waited for her to continue. "I know I've been distant," she said, her voice filled with regret. "After everything that happened, I don't know if I know how to let you in again. It's like there's this wall around my heart, something I built to protect myself, but it's keeping you out too." He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Evelyn, I don't blame you for that. I know I'm the one who put that wall there. I let my doubts and fears hurt you, when I should have been supporting you. I don't expect this to be easy, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait as long as it takes for you to trust me again." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "I want to trust you, Liam. I want to believe that we can get through this, but it's going to take time." They sat together in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Liam understood the depth of the pain he had caused, and he was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild the trust they had once shared. He knew that their journey wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to prove his commitment to her, to show her that he was worthy of the love they had once shared. A week later, the results of the paternity test arrived, sealed in an envelope that felt as heavy as the weight of their fractured past. They sat together at the kitchen table, the envelope between them, a silent reminder of the doubt and pain that had brought them to this moment. Evelyn took a deep breath, reaching for Liam's hand as they prepared to face the truth. Together, they opened the envelope, their hands trembling as they read the results. The test confirmed that Emma was indeed Liam's daughter. Relief flooded over him, a weight lifting from his shoulders as he looked at Evelyn, his heart filled with a mixture of joy and remorse. He reached for her, pulling her into his arms as the realization sank in. Emma was their child, the product of their love, and the doubts that had once clouded his mind were finally dispelled. Evelyn held him tightly, tears streaming down her face as she buried her head in his shoulder. "I told you, Liam," she whispered, her voice filled with both relief and sadness. "I told you she was ours." "I'm sorry, Evelyn," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry for ever doubting you." They held each other in silence, the weight of the past finally beginning to fade, replaced by a fragile hope for the future. The road to healing would be long, but in that moment they knew they were ready to face it together, determined to rebuild the trust they had lost and to create a future filled with love and forgiveness. Healing wounds and finding forgiveness. The confirmation of Emma's paternity brought a wave of relief that washed over both Liam and Evelyn, but it was just the beginning of their journey to healing. The truth that Emma was, without a doubt, their daughter dispelled the cloud of suspicion that had loomed over them for months, but it didn't erase the pain, the mistrust, or the memories of what they had both endured. For Evelyn, the relief was mixed with a deep-seated sadness, a reminder that Liam's doubt had overshadowed one of the most beautiful moments of her life. For Liam, there was a bittersweet joy and a remorse that lingered like an ache, knowing that he had let his fears hurt the woman he loved so deeply. The days that followed were tender but fragile, each of them learning to navigate this new landscape together. Liam took extra care with Evelyn, offering her support in small ways that might seem insignificant to an outsider. He'd leave flowers by her bedside, make her tea without her asking, and stay up late just to be there when she needed to talk or just sit in silence. They walked slowly, like two people recovering from a storm, careful not to stumble back into the darkness that had so recently enveloped them. One evening, about a week after receiving the paternity test results, Evelyn approached Liam with a small, hesitant smile. She held a blanket-wrapped bundle in her arms. Emma, fast asleep, her tiny face framed by wisps of dark hair. "Liam," Evelyn whispered, nodding toward the front porch. "You want to sit outside with her? I thought, maybe we could just be together. As a family." Liam's heart swelled, and he nodded, feeling a flicker of hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel for months. He followed Evelyn out to the front porch, the wooden steps creaking softly beneath their feet. The evening air was cool and carried the faint scent of damp earth, a comforting reminder of the home they had shared and the life they were trying to rebuild. They sat on the old swing, Evelyn resting against his shoulder, with Emma nestled in her arms. The baby's tiny breaths were soft, rhythmic, filling the quiet night with a sense of peace that felt almost foreign after the turmoil they had been through. "I missed this," Liam murmured, his voice breaking the silence. "Just being with you, just being home." Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a hint of sadness. "Me too," she replied softly. "It feels like we've lost so much time, doesn't it?" Liam nodded, regret shadowing his expression. "I know I can't change what happened," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I promise, Evelyn, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I never should have doubted you. I should have trusted you, trusted us." Evelyn reached out, placing her hand on his cheek, her touch gentle. "I believe you, Liam. I believe you want to make this right. But it's not just about what you did or didn't do. It's about how we go forward, how we learn to trust again." He looked down, nodding solemnly. "I understand, and I know it won't happen overnight. I'll be here, no matter how long it takes." They sat in silence, the swing swaying gently as they watched the stars begin to blink into existence above them. For the first time in a long time, they felt a fragile peace settle between them. It wasn't a complete mending of their broken trust, but it was a start, a tentative step toward a future they both wanted to rebuild. Over the next few months, Liam threw himself into repairing their relationship with the same dedication he had once shown in his military service. He attended counseling with Evelyn, something he had never thought he'd do. He was hesitant at first, unsure of how talking to a stranger would help them, but he quickly realized that counseling was about more than just talking. It was about understanding each other, learning to see through each other's eyes. In their sessions, Evelyn revealed the depth of her pain, her sense of betrayal, and the loneliness she had felt carrying Emma alone while he was overseas. She spoke about the night of the assault, the fear she had lived with, and the shame she had buried so deep that it had felt like a weight pressing down on her soul. She had feared that Liam would see her as damaged or broken, that he wouldn't be able to look at her the same way once he knew the truth. Listening to her, Liam felt a profound respect for the strength she had shown, for the courage it took to share her pain with him now. He realized that his own fears, his need for certainty, had blinded him to the woman he loved. She had been carrying a pain he couldn't comprehend, and in his desperation for answers, he had only added to her burden. One evening, after a particularly intense counseling session, Liam and Evelyn sat together on the floor of Emma's nursery. The room was filled with soft pastel colors, the walls adorned with whimsical paintings of animals and flowers that Evelyn had lovingly created during her pregnancy. Liam sat cross-legged, watching as Evelyn rocked Emma in the corner chair, humming a soft lullaby. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low and filled with the weight of their shared journey, "I don't think I ever truly understood what you went through, and I know I'll never fully grasp it. But I want you to know that I'm here. I'm listening, and I'll be here for whatever you need, even if it's just to sit in silence." Evelyn looked up, a faint smile on her lips. "Thank you, Liam. I think, for the first time, I believe that." They sat together in the quiet, the nursery bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight. Liam felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in months, a feeling of belonging, of home. He realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It was about holding the pain, carrying it together, and allowing their love to grow around it like a tree's roots wrapping around a stone. As time passed, the tension that had once marked their every interaction began to dissolve. They shared more moments of laughter, quiet conversations over morning coffee, and long walks in the evening with Emma nestled in her stroller. Liam found a new appreciation for the little things, the warmth of Evelyn's smile, the sound of Emma's laughter, the simple joy of sitting together as a family. Their bond grew stronger, but there were still moments of struggle. Evelyn had days when memories would resurface, when the fear and shame would linger like shadows. During those times, Liam would hold her, offering her a steady presence, a reminder that she wasn't alone. He learned that healing wasn't a linear process, that there would be good days and bad days, and that his role was to support her through them all. One evening, as they were preparing for bed, Evelyn turned to Liam, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft. "Maybe it's time for us to focus on creating new memories. Something that's just ours, something that reminds us of who we are now." Liam looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You mean, like a fresh start?" Evelyn nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Yes, a fresh start. Maybe a trip, or even something as simple as a family tradition. I want us to have something that's ours, something we can look back on and remember as the beginning of our healing." The idea filled Liam with hope. It felt like a chance to rewrite their story, to leave behind the pain and doubt, and build something new together. They began planning a small trip to the countryside, a weekend getaway where they could spend time as a family, away from the memories that haunted their home. The trip proved to be a balm for their wounded hearts. They spent lazy afternoons exploring fields of wildflowers, laughing as Emma reached out to grab the colorful blooms. They took long walks by the lake, holding hands as they watched the sunset cast golden hues across the water. In the quiet of the countryside, they found a sense of peace that had eluded them for so long. Each evening, they would sit by the fireplace, sharing stories and dreams, rediscovering the love that had once brought them together. They talked about their future, about the life they wanted to create for Emma, a life filled with love, stability, and trust. On the last night of their trip, as they sat on the porch under a starlit sky, Liam turned to Evelyn, his gaze filled with a quiet determination. "Evelyn," he said, taking her hand in his, "I know we've been through hell, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I am committed to you, to our family, to this life we're building. I promise that I'll never let my doubts or fears come between us again." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes shimmering with tears, but her smile was radiant. "I believe you, Liam, and I forgive you. I truly do. We're stronger now than we ever were before." In that moment, under the vast expanse of the night sky, they sealed their commitment to one another, a promise to let the past remain in the past and to move forward with a love forged in resilience and trust. They knew there would still be challenges, but together, they were ready to face whatever the future held. As they held each other, with Emma sleeping peacefully inside, they felt the first real sense of closure, a letting go of the hurt, the doubt, and the shadows that had once threatened to consume them. In its place, there was a profound love, a love that had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. And for the first time in a long time, they felt truly at peace, ready to embrace the life they had fought so hard to rebuild. Rebuilding love and a future together, Liam and Evelyn returned home from their trip with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to leave the pain of the past behind. The quiet countryside had offered them a glimpse of the life they could build together, a life defined by love, trust, and resilience. But as they returned to the familiar rooms of their home, they realized that the journey of healing was far from over. The memories of their shared hurt still lingered in the shadows, reminders of the trials they had faced and the wounds that would take time to fully heal. For Evelyn, the transition back into their everyday routine was both comforting and challenging. She loved their cozy home, the rooms she had decorated with so much love and anticipation during her pregnancy. But now, certain places held echoes of the loneliness she had felt in Liam's absence, reminders of the weight she had carried on her own. The nursery, once a place of hope and excitement, had been tainted by months of doubt and sadness. Evelyn decided it was time to transform it, to give it a fresh start that would reflect their newfound unity. One afternoon, Evelyn called Liam into the nursery, her eyes bright with an idea. "I want to redecorate this room," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. I want it to be a place of peace and joy, a place where Emma can grow up surrounded by love and memories of us moving forward together." Liam nodded, understanding immediately. "I think that's a wonderful idea. We could paint the walls together, maybe add some new furniture, make it truly ours again." Evelyn smiled, and they spent the next week picking out paint colors, choosing soft pastels to replace the faded greens and yellows. They selected simple but meaningful decorations, small framed quotes about family, tiny animal prints, and a mobile of stars and moons that hung gently over Emma's crib, casting soft shadows that moved with the breeze. Working together, they created a space that felt light and fresh, a place that symbolized a new beginning for their family. One evening, as they put the final touches on the room, Liam found himself standing back, looking at Evelyn with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, "for giving me this chance, for believing in us." Evelyn turned to him, her expression gentle. "Thank you, Liam, for fighting for us. I know this hasn't been easy, but I can see how hard you're trying, and that means everything to me." They shared a quiet moment, each of them silently acknowledging the struggles they had endured and the love that had brought them back together. In that room, filled with soft colors and gentle light, they felt a sense of completion, a sense that they had reclaimed something precious and irreplaceable. As the weeks passed, Liam and Evelyn found themselves growing closer, discovering new layers of their relationship that had been hidden before. The counseling sessions continued, giving them a safe space to communicate, to voice their fears and hopes without judgment. They learned to speak openly about the trauma that had touched their lives. Evelyn's assault, Liam's time in combat, and the doubts that had come between them. One evening, during a particularly deep session, the counselor suggested they each share something they had never told each other before, a memory, a fear, or a regret that had been buried beneath the surface. Evelyn looked down, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the couch as she gathered her thoughts. "When you were away," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I used to talk to Emma before she was born. I would tell her stories about you, about the things you loved and the dreams we had for our family. I wanted her to know you, even if you couldn't be there." Her voice broke slightly, and Liam reached out, taking her hand in his. "I wish I could have been there, Evelyn," he said, his voice filled with remorse. "I was so far away, focused on survival. But I didn't realize the battle you were fighting here. I regret not knowing how much you were struggling. I should have reached out more, should have been there in whatever way I could." They sat in silence, each holding on to the other's words, feeling the weight of the unsaid things that had finally come to light. The counselor looked at them, her expression warm and encouraging. "This is the essence of healing," she said gently. "Acknowledging the parts of ourselves we've kept hidden and allowing our loved ones to see them. Keep holding on to each other, even in the painful moments. That's how you build a foundation that's stronger than the past." Liam and Evelyn left the session feeling both emotionally drained and profoundly hopeful. They realized that vulnerability was no longer a weakness to be feared, but a bond that drew them closer, an opportunity to rewrite the story of their love. As they settled back into daily life, Evelyn noticed a subtle change in Liam. He was more present, more attuned to her emotions, and to Emma's needs. He spent time with Emma every morning, taking over feedings and playtime, and they developed a special bond. Watching him with their daughter, Evelyn felt her love for him deepen. She saw the man she had fallen in love with, the strong but gentle soul who had always been there, hidden beneath the weight of his own pain and doubts. One evening, as she watched Liam gently rock Emma to sleep, Evelyn felt a surge of gratitude. She approached him, wrapping her arms around his waist, resting her head against his shoulder. He looked down at her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I never imagined being a father would feel like this," he murmured. "It's different than I expected, more powerful." Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes shining. "You're a wonderful father, Liam. And you're a wonderful husband. I don't say it enough, but I'm so grateful for you." He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Thank you, Evelyn, for everything. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll spend every day earning it." They stood together in the quiet nursery, their arms wrapped around each other, feeling a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. They knew that their journey wasn't over, that there would still be days of doubt and moments of pain. But they were ready to face it together, strengthened by the love that had endured the darkest of trials. Months passed, and their relationship grew in ways they had never anticipated. They began new traditions, small rituals that bound them closer together. Every Sunday morning, they would take Emma to the nearby park, letting her toddle around on the grass as they laughed and talked. They started a weekly family dinner, inviting close friends and family to share in their lives and create new memories that erased the shadows of the past. One spring evening, they decided to host a small gathering to celebrate Emma's first birthday. It was a sunny day with a gentle breeze rustling through the trees, and they set up a picnic in their backyard. Friends and family gathered, laughing and sharing stories, their presence a reminder of the love and support that had carried Liam and Evelyn through their darkest days. Evelyn watched as Liam helped Emma blow out her single candle, his face lit up with joy. She felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing they had survived the storm together. They had created something beautiful from the wreckage, a life filled with love, resilience, and hope. As the evening wore on, the guests began to depart, leaving Liam and Evelyn alone with their sleeping daughter. They sat together on the porch, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the yard. Liam took Evelyn's hand, his gaze serious but soft. "I want you to know, Evelyn, that this year, this journey, it's changed me. I've learned what it means to love someone unconditionally, to fight for them even when it's hard. And I've learned that our love is stronger than any fear or doubt." Evelyn looked at him, her heart swelling with love. "I feel the same way, Liam. I think we've both learned so much, not just about each other, but about ourselves. And I believe that we can face anything together." They sat in silence, their fingers intertwined, each of them reflecting on the road they had traveled. The pain, the doubts, the heartbreak. They were all part of their story, but they no longer defined it. Instead, they had become stepping stones, markers of a journey that had brought them closer, stronger, and more in love than ever before. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Liam turned to Evelyn, his voice barely a whisper. "I know I've said it before, but thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for forgiving me, for loving me even when I didn't deserve it." Evelyn smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'll always love you, Liam, and I know we'll keep building this life together, one day at a time." They sat together under the starlit sky, their hearts full, their souls entwined. They had been tested in ways they had never imagined, but their love had endured, weathered, and emerged stronger than ever. And as they looked ahead, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, bound by a love that had been forged in the fires of trust, forgiveness, and resilience, embracing the future and the legacy of love. As the years passed, Liam and Evelyn grew into a rhythm of love and partnership that was strengthened by the trials they had endured. Their once fragile bond was now unbreakable, forged in the fires of forgiveness, and cemented by the quiet promises they had made to one another during those difficult months. Every day they found ways to honor their commitment, both in the small moments of shared laughter and the silent support offered during difficult times. Their journey hadn't erased the past, but it had transformed it into a foundation, a testament to the resilience of their love. Emma grew up in a home filled with warmth, laughter, and stability. Her earliest memories were of sunny mornings spent on the front porch with her parents, the three of them sharing breakfasts and stories, creating a life defined by love and safety. For her, their home was a haven, a place where she felt cherished, her parents' love an unshakable pillar she could lean on. Liam and Evelyn cherished each milestone, each step, and each word, marveling at the wonder of parenthood and the miracle of watching their daughter grow. One crisp autumn afternoon, Liam and Evelyn took Emma to a local farm for apple picking, a tradition they had started when Emma turned 3. She was now 5, a vibrant, curious child with her mother's smile and her father's quiet determination. As they walked through the orchard, Emma's laughter echoed through the rows of trees, filling the air with joy and reminding Liam and Evelyn of just how far they had come. As Emma ran ahead, chasing after a butterfly, Liam slipped his hand into Evelyn's, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Sometimes I still can't believe we're here," he said, his voice filled with awe. "After everything, it feels like a dream." Evelyn smiled, her eyes soft as she looked at him. "I know. There were times I thought we'd lost each other. But here we are. And it's more beautiful than I ever could have imagined." They walked in silence for a while, watching Emma's delighted attempts to catch the butterfly. Liam felt a surge of gratitude for the life they had rebuilt, for the forgiveness that had given them a second chance. He turned to Evelyn, a question that had been on his mind for some time finally finding its way to his lips. "Evelyn," he began, a hint of hesitation in his voice. Do you ever think about having another child?" Evelyn's eyes widened slightly, and she looked away, her expression thoughtful. They hadn't discussed expanding their family since the difficult times following Emma's birth. Evelyn had devoted herself to raising Emma, to nurturing their love, and to finding peace in the life they had worked so hard to rebuild. The idea of another child hadn't crossed her mind for a long time, and yet now, as she watched Emma running through the orchard, her heart stirred. "I hadn't thought about it in a while," she admitted, turning back to Liam. "But I think it could be something beautiful. A way of celebrating the life we've built, the family we've become." A smile spread across Liam's face, his heart lifting at her words. "I think so too. And whatever happens, I know we're ready for it. Ready to share this love we found." They spent the rest of the afternoon in the orchard, filling baskets with apples and sharing stories about their hopes for the future. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table with Emma, the warmth of the day still lingering in their hearts, they talked about the possibility of a sibling for her. Emma's eyes lit up at the idea, and she immediately began imagining all the ways she would care for a baby brother or sister. Liam and Evelyn exchanged a look, their hearts brimming with a love that was now unbreakable, bound by trust and the knowledge that together they could face anything. The following spring, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant. The news brought a surge of joy and excitement that filled their home with an energy they hadn't felt in years. This pregnancy was different from her first, marked by a sense of security and calm, a shared understanding that had been born out of the trials they had faced together. She no longer carried the fear of the past, but embraced this new chapter with open arms, knowing that she and Liam were stronger than ever. Liam was a constant presence, attending every doctor's appointment, asking questions, and supporting Evelyn in ways that showed how deeply he was committed to their family. He marveled at the strength she displayed, her resilience shining through with every milestone they reached. For him, this pregnancy was more than just the arrival of a new child. It was a symbol of their growth, their resilience, and the love that had not only survived but flourished through adversity. As the months passed, they involved Emma in every step, encouraging her to talk to the baby, teaching her to sing lullabies, and letting her help decorate the nursery. This time, they chose colors that reflected their journey, soft blues and earthy greens, a reminder of the peace they had found in each other. Emma's excitement grew with each passing day, and she proudly told everyone she met about her new sibling on the way. One summer night, as they sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance across their yard, Evelyn turned to Liam, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Liam," she said softly, "I want you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter where life takes us, I know we can face it. I don't fear the future anymore. You've shown me what it means to be loved, to be held, even in the hardest times." Liam looked at her, his heart swelling with emotion. "And you've taught me the meaning of true strength, Evelyn. You've shown me that love isn't just about the good moments. It's about holding on through the storms, through the darkness, and coming out stronger on the other side. I'll spend my life loving you, standing by you, and protecting this family we've built." They shared a gentle kiss, a quiet promise that held the weight of all they had endured. As they sat together, bathed in the glow of the fireflies, they felt the fullness of their love, the power of the life they had created, and the joy of the future that awaited them. On a bright autumn day, Evelyn gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom they named Noah. The labor was long, but Liam was by her side every step of the way, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement, and reminding her of the strength she had always possessed. When he finally held Noah in his arms, he felt a profound sense of awe and gratitude. This child, this new life, was a testament to their love, a symbol of the family they had fought to keep whole. Bringing Noah home was a moment of pure joy. Emma was thrilled to be a big sister, showering her brother with affection and vowing to protect him. She held his tiny hand, proudly showing him her favorite toys and promising to teach him everything she knew. Evelyn watched them with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by the beauty of the life they had created. As the months passed, their home was filled with the laughter of two children, the sounds of bedtime stories, and the joy of family dinners. Liam and Evelyn often sat together in quiet moments, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this place. They had weathered the darkest of storms, but now their lives were filled with light, a light that was born from their love, their resilience, and their unshakable commitment to one another. One evening, as they watched Emma and Noah playing in the yard, Liam took Evelyn's hand, his voice filled with the quiet contentment that had come to define their life together. "Do you remember the promise we made, Evelyn? That we would build a life together, one filled with love and strength, no matter what came our way." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes shining with love. "Yes, I remember. And we've done it, haven't we? We've built something beautiful, something that will last." Liam nodded, pulling her close. "Yes, we have. And I know we'll keep building it, day by day, as long as we're together." They sat in the golden light of the setting sun, their hearts full, their souls at peace. They had traveled a long and difficult road, but they had come out stronger, more in love, and more grateful for each other than they could have ever imagined. Their story was one of resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love, a legacy they would pass on to their children, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love could heal, rebuild, and transform. As they watched their children laughing together, Liam and Evelyn knew that their journey had been worth every hardship, every tear, and every painful moment. They had found a love that was unbreakable, a life that was beautiful, and a future that was brighter than they had ever dreamed. And as they looked forward, they knew that together, they could face whatever life held, united by a love that had stood the test of time.